Granny's Blackie. In the ancient city of Benares, a poor old woman received a tiny bull calf to settle a debt. Though she had little to her name, the moment she held the small black calf in her trembling arms, her heart overflowed with love. She was all alone in the world, and now she had a child to care for. "I shall call you Kanya," she whispered, which means the Dark One. But as the little calf grew, everyone in the neighborhood began to call him by a warmer name, Granny's Blackie. Despite her poverty, the old woman shared everything she had with Blackie. She cooked rice gruel for him from her own small rations, fed him by hand, and spoke to him as though he were her own grandchild. "Eat well, my little one," she would say, her wrinkled face beaming with joy. Blackie grew quickly, his jet-black coat gleaming like polished ebony, his muscles growing stronger with each passing season. And in his young heart, a fierce devotion to the old woman who had given him everything took root. Blackie grew into the most magnificent bull anyone had ever seen. His jet-black coat shone like silk in the sunlight, and his powerful muscles rippled with every step. He was extraordinarily strong, stronger than any other bull in all of Benares. But when Blackie looked at his beloved grandmother's humble home, with its cracked walls and leaking roof, his heart ached. She had given him everything despite having so little. He watched her count her last few coins with worried eyes, and he silently vowed that he would find a way to repay her love. Blackie's chance came when a wealthy young merchant arrived at the river ford outside Benares with a massive caravan of 500 loaded wagons. The ford was rocky and treacherous, with swift water rushing over slippery stones. The merchant yoked all his oxen together and urged them forward, but the wagons would not budge. The oxen strained and slipped on the wet rocks, bellowing in exhaustion. The merchant shouted and cursed, but it was no use. His entire caravan was hopelessly stuck, and he faced ruin if he could not cross the river. Word of the stuck caravan reached the town, and Blackie saw his chance. He walked proudly to the river ford, his massive black frame towering over the exhausted oxen. The merchant stared in awe at the magnificent beast. "I can pull your wagons across," Blackie declared. "Every last one. But my price is 2 coins per cart, 1,000 coins in total." The merchant's eyes narrowed, calculating. 500 wagons of precious goods stranded meant far greater losses. "Agreed," he said quickly, already thinking of ways to pay less. They sealed the bargain, and Blackie was yoked to the lead wagon. What followed was a feat of strength that would be told for generations. Blackie dug his hooves into the rocky riverbed and pulled with every ounce of his enormous strength. The muscles beneath his shining black coat bulged like boulders. Water churned and splashed around his powerful legs as he dragged the massive wagons through the rushing ford, one group after another. His dark eyes turned red with the effort, veins standing out along his neck, but he never stopped, never faltered. 500 wagons, loaded to the brim, hauled safely across the treacherous river crossing by a single magnificent bull. When the last wagon was safely across, the merchant approached Blackie with a sly smile. Instead of the agreed 1,000 coins, he tied a bag of only 500 coins around the bull's thick neck. "There you go, beast. That should be more than enough," the merchant muttered, turning to leave with his caravan. But Blackie was no fool. He planted his massive body directly in the path of the lead wagon, blocking the entire caravan from moving forward. No amount of shouting or pushing could make him budge. "Pay what you owe," his fierce dark eyes seemed to say. The merchant had no choice. With the caravan blocked and his goods at risk, he grudgingly untied the bag and added the remaining 500 coins. "There. 1,000 coins," as agreed, he sputtered angrily. Only then did Blackie step aside, letting the caravan pass. The merchant drove away, muttering about the stubborn bull, but everyone who witnessed the scene marveled at Blackie's intelligence and sense of justice. 1,000 coins hung proudly from the great black bull's neck as he turned toward home, more money than the old woman had ever seen in her entire life. When the old woman heard the heavy jingling at her door and saw Blackie standing there with 1,000 coins hanging from his neck, she burst into tears. "Oh, my dear child. Why did you work so hard for me?" she wept, throwing her frail arms around his great black neck. She washed him lovingly with warm water, fed him the finest food she could find, and for the first time in years, her worried eyes sparkled with hope. Blackie rested his great head against her shoulder, his heart full. He had repaid the love of the one who had given him everything, and that was the greatest reward of all. Moral: devotion to those who have loved us is the noblest virtue. Hard work and honesty should always be rewarded, and one should never try to cheat those who serve faithfully. The bitter dice. Long ago, in the great city of Varanasi, there lived a clever young man named Sumedho who loved playing dice. He was honest and fair, and won or lost with a cheerful heart. But in the same city there was a gambler named Chatura who was famous for never losing a single game. He must be the luckiest man alive, the townspeople would say. But Sumedho was not so sure. Sumedho watched Chatura play several games and noticed something peculiar. Whenever Chatura was about to lose, one of the dice would mysteriously vanish from the board. "The game cannot continue, a die is missing," Chatura would declare, and the game would be called off. Sumedho watched closely and finally saw the truth. At the very moment of losing, Chatura would quickly pop a die into his mouth and hide it under his tongue. Sumedho knew he had to teach Chatura a lesson, but he wanted to do it cleverly without causing any real harm. He visited the old medicine woman at the edge of town and asked for the most bitter herb she had. She gave him a paste made from neem leaves and bitter gourd, completely harmless, but so terribly bitter that anyone who tasted it would never forget. Sumedho carefully coated a set of dice with the invisible bitter paste and let them dry in the sun. The next day, Sumedho challenged Chatura to a grand game of dice in the town square. A crowd of excited townspeople gathered to watch. "Let us use my new dice," Sumedho offered with a smile, placing the specially prepared dice on the board. Chatura agreed eagerly, thinking he could easily cheat with any dice. The game began, and the crowd held its breath as the dice rolled back and forth. As the game went on, Chatura began to lose badly. In a flash, his hand darted to the board and a die disappeared into his mouth. "Oh no, a die is missing," he announced, pretending to search the ground. But Sumedho just smiled calmly. "Go ahead and swallow it, friend," he said. "You will discover what it really is soon enough." Chatura, confused by the strange words, kept the die hidden in his mouth, but within moments the terrible bitterness hit his tongue like a wave of fire. Chatura's face twisted and turned bright red. His eyes bulged, tears streamed down his cheeks, and he spat out the die, coughing and sputtering. "Water! Water!" he gasped, falling to his knees. The crowd burst into laughter as they finally understood the cheater's trick. There on the ground lay the die, covered in green bitter paste, and Chatura's secret was exposed for all to see. Sumedho helped Chatura to his feet and offered him sweet milk and honey to wash away the bitterness. The old medicine woman appeared with her remedies and gently tended to the miserable cheater. As Chatura sat there, humbled and ashamed, Sumedho spoke kindly. "The bitterness in your mouth is nothing compared to the bitterness that dishonesty brings to your life. You could have been a great player, but you chose the path of deceit." From that day forward, Chatura never cheated at dice again. The memory of that terrible bitterness stayed with him forever, reminding him that dishonesty always leaves a bitter taste. He learned to play fairly and honestly, and though he lost some games, he gained something far more valuable, the respect and friendship of the people around him. And Sumedho smiled, knowing that sometimes the best lesson is one you can taste. Moral: dishonesty always leaves a bitter taste, play fair and you will win what truly matters. The Boastful Bird. Long ago, by a sparkling lake in the mountains of ancient India, there lived a magnificent golden goose king. His feathers shone like pure gold in the sunlight, and he was loved and respected by all the birds of the lake. He had 2 fine sons, young golden geese just like himself, with bright feathers and kind hearts. But the golden goose king had a secret. Whenever he flew to the feeding grounds near the great city of Mitilor, he would visit a sleek black crow who lived there. Together they had a son, a strange-looking bird who was neither golden like his father nor black like his mother. His feathers were a patchy, dingy blue-black, and so they called him Vinalaka, which means the dingy one. Vinalaka grew up near the city, cared for by his crow mother. But the golden goose king loved all his children and flew often to visit his unusual son. One day, the 2 golden brothers said to their father, "Father, you fly to the city so often. It is dangerous where humans live. Let us bring our brother Vinalaka here to the lake where he will be safe." The kind Golden Goose King agreed. The two golden brothers flew to the city and found Vinalaka perched on a rooftop. "Brother, come with us," they said cheerfully. "We will carry you to father's beautiful lake." They held a sturdy stick between their beaks and told Vinalaka to perch upon it. Vinalaka climbed on, holding tight, and they rose into the sky together. They soared high above the great city of Mitilo. Below them, a grand procession moved through the streets. It was King Videha himself, riding in a magnificent golden chariot pulled by 4 splendid white horses. Soldiers marched alongside, and the people cheered and bowed as their wise and beloved king passed by. Vinalaka looked down at the king's grand procession and puffed up with pride. "Ha!" he cried loudly. "Look at me. I am greater than King Videha himself. He is carried by white horses on the ground, but I am carried by golden birds through the sky. I am the mightiest of all." His boastful words echoed through the air as his brothers flew on in stunned silence. The two golden brothers were deeply hurt and angry. How dare he boast like that, they thought. We are carrying him out of kindness, and he claims to be greater than a king. For a moment, they wanted to drop him right there and then. But they thought of their father's love for Vinalaka, and so they held their anger and flew on silently until they reached the mountain lake. When they arrived, the golden brothers told their father everything Vinalaka had said. The Golden Goose King listened sadly. "My son," he said to Vinalaka, "your brothers carried you through the sky out of love, and you repaid their kindness with arrogance. You compared yourself to a great king, but true greatness comes from humility and gratitude, not from boasting. One who cannot appreciate those who help him does not deserve their help." With a heavy heart, the Golden Goose King asked the two brothers to carry Vinalaka back to the city. This time, the brothers did not fly gently. They carried the now silent Vinalaka over the city and set him down right where he belonged. And so Vinalaka, who had boasted of being mightier than a king, ended up humbled and alone, learning the hardest lesson of all, that pride without gratitude leads only to a fall. Moral: true greatness comes from humility and gratitude, not from boasting about what others do for you.